Yo, what's up everyone? Sir Toby here, back with another video, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about league starters. So first, let's maybe talk about some general considerations that I personally made for my league starter, where, I'm not entirely sure yet which one of two league starters I will personally be playing, but, I thought it would be maybe interesting to talk about those considerations, and then I am going to talk about like four-ish builds that I personally think you can't really go wrong with. It just depends on what playstyle you prefer. So first, let's think about what content you want to focus on. I think that's the most important part about choosing your league starter. There is mapping focused league starters, there is bossing focused league starters, there's like all-rounders maybe. So for bossing, for example, it would be something like Seismic Trap. For mapping, it would probably be something like Corrupting Fever or Blade Vortex, or some kind of poison, Plague Bearer, Explosion build. And then as like an all-rounder, I would probably, say it's something like Explosive Arrow Ballista. That's like the all-rounder build of the last few leagues. Similarly to Lightning Strike, rest in peace. So yeah, that's what I would call those. So for me personally, my number one priorities for the first few days so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, are just killing bosses. That's because from Monday on I have to go to work. So sadly I can't no life this game anymore as much as I did when I was still in college. So now I actually have to have a plan for what I can do in my 4, 5, 6 hours, only big air quotes, that I have in the evenings when I'm back from work. So that is probably going to be Expedition, because Expedition is still great even if you can only run it for a few hours. Where, bosses, if you have unrun bosses, the profit margins on those are going to be all kinds of screwed up after the first few days. So, that's probably something I want to do, Expedition. And then for the league mechanic, I really like roguelikes, so if at all possible and like feasible, currency-wise, if it's not complete garbage, I want to run this league mechanic. So, I want a build that is able to run this league mechanic well. So that for me means two main choices for my league starter. So I'm not going to play a, mapping focused build like Corrupting Fever or Blade Vortex. I need something that can kill bosses, that is good in Expedition, and that can do the league mechanic if I needed to. And for that, personally, I've identified either Cold Seismic, again, which was my league starter last league, and which did great, or, Explosive Arrow Ballista, which, I've played a little bit in some of the events, tried a little bit in the events. I don't hate the playstyle too much, and it's probably a better choice for Expedition than Seismic Trap is. But then you trade some of that, smooth Expedition playstyle for worse performance against bosses. Both should be pretty good against the league mechanic, because I can just put the Seismic or Totems down and then run around and dodge all those thingies that, take away your, I forgot what it's called, but the second health thing they introduced this league, I guess. The second consideration you might want to have when choosing your league starter is whether your leveling is going to be smooth. Explosive Arrow Ballista leveling is incredibly smooth, so you just run around with wands, kill stuff with like Rolling Magma or some kind of fire skill until you can transition to Explosive Arrow on like level 38 or something. When you get Ignite Prolif, technically you can even do it earlier if you have Elemental Proliferation, just a little bit worse. For Cold Seismic, it's a bit more complicated. You kind of have to play around with the tree a little bit. It might be better to just not transition until like level 55 to like a pure cold thingy. You kind of really need Rim Sorrow, so before that you're just taking like generic fist nodes, and it's overall kind of rough. But it really takes off after level 55, and if you just buy Rim Sorrows super early as like your first item, it's completely fine still. but I was really happy to be leveling with someone else last league. So my early levels were kind of carried by my friend, who was just playing like, I think, Poisonous Concoction. So that's like the smoothest leveling of all time. If you level with Poisonous Concoction, you're never going to have to stop for anything. You're just gonna obliterate everything on like a 3-link. So yeah. Then you might want to think about how you're going to progress your build. So do you want a build that is pretty much going to be the only build you play this league, that can do everything? Then something like Explosive Arrow is great. You can just upgrade that build almost infinitely. It will only get better at what it does throughout the league. On the other hand, something like a Poisonous Concoction Occultist is really good at transitioning into something like Blade Vortex Occultist that is just better at leveling, at mapping than the Poisonous Concoction is. So if you want to like do Blade Vortex mapping, it's probably a great idea to start with like Poisonous Concoction or Blade for Blade Blast Occultist. Use that to do some early farming until you have like 15, 20 divines, Aznav gloves, all those kinds of things, and then you transition, and then voila, you just completely run through maps and explode everything. So that's something you might want to consider as well. So if I choose Seismic Trap, for example, I know that I'm going to play Seismic Trap for like a week or two, sell off the build, or like level a new character and then do a second build that is completely separate from my Seismic Trap, because it's like a pure boss up pretty much. And then the fourth thing I think that's really important is that you know what to do with your uniques and stuff. So for example, last league, or where you get your uniques, like last league I thought about doing like a stone golem elementalist. I love golems. I think from like 3.13 until like 3.17 or something, I league started like 4, 5, 6 leagues in a row with golems. But for example, this league, we don't know where we get the golem jewels. It says it's deterministic. What does that mean? We don't know. Do we really want to risk it? Lastly, the consideration was, how rare is Clay Shaper going to be? How rare is a good primordial chain going to be? How expensive is a good primordial chain going to be? Same with like cold iron points, breath stealers, all those items that you might need for your build. That's a real consideration. That's also true for something like Corrupting Fever, where you really want, for example, the Bleed Explode gloves or Poet's Pen if you're playing the champion version. And you can't really, you don't know how reliable you're going to get those, how expensive those are going to be. I think there is like last league there was the level 29 added chaos damage new chest or rework chest. I forgot the name. It's like a silk something rope base that everybody wanted for their poison builds. That was suddenly like 5 to 10 divines early in the league, and it was super rare. So, if you rely on like single unique items, make sure that you can get them. Alright, so let's talk about 4 specific builds. So the 2 builds that I'm currently thinking about doing is Explosive Arrow, Ballista, Elementalist. The playstyle is kind of annoying. I think at this point everybody knows this build, right? Like I don't have to like go into too much detail. You put down totems. Those totems put like stacks of Explosive Arrow onto enemies, that explodes, and then your ignite kills them. So, it needs like a second until damage is applied, but afterwards it's just, on the enemies, and it's a good time. It scales super well. It's pretty cheap to get going. Overall, great build. If you just want to have a build that can do everything from bossing to mapping reasonably well. On the other hand, Cold Seismic is like a pure bossing character, pretty much. So this I have a build guide on that build from last league. I started this last league, so I'm going to link my profile where you can see the progression from day 1 to day 5. I think day 4 is the same as day 3, and day 5 only has a mage blood. But let's say from day 1 to day 3. So maybe you can take a look there if you want if you want to follow that. But overall, this character did great. I got a mage blood in day 5. On day 5, and this is my day 3 gear, and against a pretty juicy Height of Hubris invitation. So as you can see, like, I have 3.3k life, so if you get touched, you're dead. I think at this point my character had like 700 deaths. But everything just completely melts. So yeah, Hydra one-shot me, then you go back, you get your 4 seismics back, and then you go back into the invitation and just nuke it again. And that is with like very basic gear on the scepters. The gems are kind of expensive because you want them in power. And then, you know, the rest of the gear is also not that expensive. The expensive pieces are basically the Devouring Diadem and the Empower. But yeah, so you just pretty much nuke everything and it's fine. It's great. Yeah, so if you want to kill bosses, this build is great. But, you know, if you want to do like mapping content, this is not great. You have like no life, you have nothing. Oh, my camera froze, great. Whoop. So just that. But yeah, it's a great build if you just want to kill stuff and kill stuff quickly, especially bosses. I think this is also going to be really good in this like Sanctum thing, because it didn't look like there's like hordes of enemies, and even if there is, you know, your seismic traps are going to cover basically the entire arena, and, you know, just kill everything before it even touches you. The only issue that I see with the League mechanic here might be that you get one shot without losing your resolve, or whatever that mechanic is called. Or the visual clutter from the seismic trap is too much to see enemy attacks, and you lose your resolve that way. Those are like the 2 issues there. If you want a mapping character, you know, Corrupting Fever, either Gladiator or Champion is completely fine and great. Or, which I personally would recommend if you want to, you know, just run maps, is start with a Poisonous Concoction, Occultist. You know, throw out Poisonous Concoctions, farm like 15-20 divines, depending on how much everything costs. Maybe check out the cost before you transition. But then you can just follow something like this guy by Tripolar Bear from last league, and pretty much, you know, have a great time like a week into the league, and you're pretty much set on your mapping character that can scale into endgame, that can do everything. That's just fun, because Blade Vortex is fun as hell and explodes stuff around you. So yeah, those are pretty much the options that I would suggest. But I do think that Corrupting Fever Gladiator could be decent for the League mechanic. And then Blade Vortex, I really don't know if it's going to be great for the League mechanic or not. I suspect that it's not great to stand next to enemies in the League mechanic, just because if you get hit, you lose that resolve thing. I think melee is going to be completely terrible against the League mechanic. I hope I'm wrong and this is not actually the case, but yeah, we shall see how it turns out. So yeah, if you have any questions about potential League starters, feel free to leave those in the comments. I'm going to, if I can, respond and, you know, give you feedback on what I think of those builds. I'm going to leave this, this, you know, poe.ninja link. I'm going to, you know, for you to check out. I'm going to link this, pretty much everything that I showed you. I'm going to link in the description. I think even, I'm just going to even link this Stone Golem thing. There is some stuff in the notes. It was like a thing that I thought about making a build guide on last league, but I decided not to, because there was just too many uniques and stuff. But if you want to start a build like this because you think it's gonna be fine, and don't come at me if it fails, but, you know, I'm gonna leave it in the description if you're interested in that. So there is that. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you have fun and have fun as much fun as I think I'm going to have next league, because, you know, I love roguelikes. So, yeah, hope to see you in Sanctum League. Bye!